Your questions are in, and now it's just down to me to answer them. I'm Stephen from Automotive. Welcome to another video. Now it's time to talk cars. So maybe get a cup of tea or coffee, or even pour yourself a beer. You can join me in a beer, because I'm certainly having one, and we can talk cars together. I wasn't sure how many questions I'd get, if any, and I was pleasantly surprised. So let's start working through them. First of all, from Erhard Simdorn, 7039, from Germany. Now Erhard, you've been a long-term supporter of this channel, and you've been here for a while, so I want to say a massive thank you for your support. And your question, how did you become a car fanatic, and how much of your life does this hobby take up? Okay, cars have always been big in my life. For as long as I can remember, I was mad about cars. As a kid, I had loads of toy cars, matchbox cars, everything you can imagine, minis, escorts, just everything of the time, obviously. But things really ramped up one day when I was on a school trip at a museum, the Chalk Pits Museum down in Amberley in Sussex. I think every school kid in the southeast gets to go there, or did back then, although it is still there and does a cracking beer festival every year. But back then, we were there on a school trip and we got off the coach and we were just making our way to this museum, and there it was. It was mustard colour. It was very obvious to me that the engine was in the back, because I could smell the heat from the engine, and it had obviously only just been switched off, and I could hear it kind of ticking, as engines do as they cool down. And it had this tiny little squished exhaust pipe at the back on the right, and these grills in the rear engine cover. And I had no idea what this car was, but the fascination was just immense. And that's all I could think of the whole day on this school trip was, what was this car? I'd never seen one before. It was really strange looking, but fascinating. And ultimately, I did get to find out what it was. And when I got back, I must have asked my parents, or could only have been about 9 or 10. And it was a Fiat 500, the original air-cooled Fiat 500. And from that point on, I had to just seek these cars out wherever we were. If we saw one, I had to wind the window down to hear it, because they made this really strange sound. The little 2-cylinder air-cooled engine. And I subsequently discovered at the time that that car was quite old even then, and it had been replaced by the Fiat 126, which I then became equally obsessed with. And I had the workshop manuals for these cars, and I'd read them cover to cover, even at such a young age, and I just knew everything about them as much as I could without having ever actually laid my hands on one physically. But I was always hunting for them. So that's kind of when my interest in cars really suddenly took a great big leap. And then beyond that, throughout my teens, when I was at school, I was always thinking about other cars. I liked VW Beetles, the original air-cooled ones, and I knew everything inside out, engine capacities, different specs for different models, different years. Now back then we used to have a rough book at school just for ideas. I don't know if that's still a thing now, but it was then. And most people would put things down to do with their schoolwork. All I'd have would be the specs of a Beetle 1200, 1300, 1500, 1600, and I'd be drawing pictures of cars and engines and stuff. So that is how interested I was in these cars. And the next part of the question, how much of your life does this hobby take up? A lot of it, now I've got the channel. I like to put a video out every Friday. Sometimes I've got several stored up, queued up if you like, ready to go, so I can have time off. At the moment I'm a little bit hand to mouth with the videos, just due to my work schedule and stuff that's going on in my life. But whenever I'm not at work, I'm either planning or working on cars or sourcing parts or making videos or editing videos. So it is quite demanding, but the channel's growing, and for that reason I continue. So the next question here is from Jimmy Adams 628, another frequent viewer of the channel, so thank you Jimmy. And your question, where did you get your vast knowledge of cars? Also, where do you get the energy? Right, so in terms of the vast knowledge of cars, I've partly answered it with the previous question. Something a little bit personal, but no secret. My parents split when I was around 11 years old, and my father ultimately ended up moving overseas to the United States. And I took it upon myself to really make sure that my mum's car was in good condition. I got quite protective of her to make sure that she was okay, and I wanted her car to be safe. So I would clean it and I would hoover it and I would check all the levels and make sure it had enough coolant and the oil level, brake fluid and stuff. And I got really involved with that, and I would do oil changes on it. And I really wanted to just make sure it was okay. Something that I did back then, which seems utterly pointless now, was that I bought some soundproofing, some like padding, because my mum's car was a Mini and I was really worried that they weren't very safe if she had an accident. So for some reason I believed that by putting this sound insulation, this padding under the front carpet, they would protect her in an accident. I mean, it wouldn't do a thing, would it? But that's how an 11-year-old's brain works. So I did all that on her car because I wanted it to be safe. And then ultimately I ended up working with cars. So I had many years working for dealerships, and that will be covered in another question very soon. The next part of the question, where do you get the energy? Well, I have a lot of energy. I don't know where it comes from either. It just comes from within. I am a very enthusiastic person, and there is a lot of energy. I have to channel it really carefully, because if I get bored and there's nowhere for that energy to go, as they say, the devil makes work for idle hands. And it's important that I channel it, which I do, into my hobbies, into my cars and my videos. But I'm not going to lie, I don't relax very well. It's just how I'm wired. I hope you're enjoying your beer or your tea or your coffee as much as I am. And the next question is from Carlos Baradas, 7807. What main dealers have you worked in, if that's the case, and what was your preferred one? Why do you like the 451s? Okay, I worked for a Volkswagen and Audi dealership. That was back in the day when they were on the same grounds, because there was a brand separation thing that happened in the 90s and they had to be separated. But I actually worked for them before and after the brand separation. So I worked with Volkswagen and Audi, and I was with that garage for about 10 years. I worked, the next one, I'm embarrassed to admit the next one, and it wasn't for very long, but I actually worked for Daewoo back when they had dealers. I think at one point it went to Halfords, but I worked for a Daewoo dealer, and those cars, well, they were something else. They were absolute crap. I mean, the training was good. We used to go to the Thatcham research laboratories for our training, and the training was fantastic and totally over the top for the product that we had, because it was essentially just recycled old General Motors rubbish from the 80s. It was an Espero thing that was just the most dreadful car ever. I mean, the bulkheads used to just fall to pieces, pull through. There were just so many structural issues, and we were doing exhaust rear silencers at first services. The tailpipes used to just fall off. The quality was so bad. So I worked for that dealer for a really short amount of time, and it was so bad, but I don't regret it because I saw things from another perspective. I then worked for a Vauxhall dealer for around 7 years. Now, if you're a European, you'll know that as Opel. And I don't know why we do this in the UK. We call Opel cars Vauxhall. I mean, I guess there's history there and that makes sense, but I mean, it's German. Why would you want to make something German, bearing in mind that German things are known for quality? Why would you want to make that sound English? I've always thought that was ridiculous, and I used to say that even when I worked there. But Vauxhall, Opel, it was all General Motors. That was until Stellantis got their claws into everything. And last of all, I did work for a short time for a Land Rover dealer. But having worked primarily with Germanic products, I couldn't really get on with it. It was very illogical in so many ways, and the dealership itself, there were a couple of personality clashes and it really didn't work out. And at that point I left the motor trade. And in terms of my favourite, I have to say Vauxhall. Actually good cars, despite what people may think, and I made some great friends there. It was a very laid back sort of family environment in terms of the dealership, and I like that. Some main dealers can put you under quite a lot of stress in terms of beating targets and stuff. It wasn't like that there at all, and I look back at my years there as some of my finest and some of my fondest memories. And the second part of the question, why do you like the 451s? Well, from the moment the 450 was launched, I was really fascinated by it and got really involved with 450s and owned quite a few of them. And it was a natural evolution from that, really. The 451, I think, is a far superior car. It's stronger. They've taken something that was amazing and made it even better. Some might argue that the dashboard has lost some of its character because it's a bit more conventional, but it just felt a whole lot more grown up and a much better driving experience. And I know that everybody slates the transmission delay and the gear change delay. But I think it's okay on the 451. I don't have a problem with that. They just drive better. And I think it peaked at the 451. I know people with 453s will say, oh, you wait till you drive a 453. I don't like how they look. They look it all looks a bit too feline at the front. I think the 451 and the 450 had that proper smart silhouette. The whole thing that got me interested in them in the first place. It was there in the 450. I think it was improved in the 451. I think it was largely lost in the 453. And then you've got the Renault element creeping in as well, and that doesn't really sit well with me. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Michael Glynn, 2638. Again, another loyal follower of the channel. Thank you for that. Your question, how do you find all the technical specifications, torque values, etc. for so many different cars? I don't have any sort of secret source of the data. I genuinely look on Google and I just check out reliable sources and I compare it against other sources to be sure, to confirm what I find. There's stuff that's in here that I just know over the years. You get to know stuff and you retain that information. But yeah, Google, simple as that. Now this next question is brilliant, and this is from Brass Llama. Hello Stephen, I'd like to know which is your least favourite car on UK roads at the moment and why. Right, there are a few contenders, but hands down, it's the Nissan Duke. I hate the Nissan Duke. There's something about it that I find so grotesque that when I see one, I actually get angry. And I don't know why it gives me that reaction, but it's so damn ugly. And I'd love to have a 5-minute chat with the designer and just say, what the hell were you thinking? It's a horrible dumpy looking thing. The headlamps, and if you haven't seen one of these cars, if you're lucky enough to be in a territory where they're not imported, maybe the United States, I don't think you get them, but you've got that Aztec thing which is just as hideous, off Breaking Bad. That's probably your equivalent of our Nissan Duke in terms of just undesirability. But so many aspects of that car are just bloody awful. I'm going to put some pictures up on the screen for people that don't know what this car is, just so you know what I'm actually referring to here. But the headlamps, so you've got these sort of nice, reasonable shaped headlamps. And then you've got these bloody awful, great, big bug eyes that look at you underneath. Why? It's so nasty. At the back, you've got these sort of boomerang shaped lights. Just horrid. And then the side profile of the car, over the wheel arches, they're these big swooping kind of arch things. Every area of that car is fighting another area of it. Nothing kind of works. It's unpleasant. And if you've got one, why did you buy one? I'm sorry you bought one. What made you wake up one day and think, oh, I think I'll go and buy a Nissan Duke. They're nice. I mean, inside, it's not even spacious inside. It's cramped and hideous. It has no redeeming features. I think I've answered this the best I can. Hope I haven't gone over the top, but I think I might need to get my blood pressure checked now, because they annoy me that much. They really do. The next question comes from Rachel Pullen 7759. And the question is, Was ist deine Lieblingswurst? If you don't understand German, that means, what is your favourite sausage? This one. Next question comes from Darren McAdam 2318. Do you have a PO box so I can send you some gifts? Unfortunately, I do not. I've never set one up. Don't currently plan to, and I can't really go giving out my address for my own security reasons, and I hope you understand that. But thank you anyway, it's very kind. The next question is from Smart451-UT6DF. My question is fairly light-hearted. How would you adapt if the government chose to tax cars based on their colour? Silver being the most expensive, £700 per year rate, going down to bright yellow or pink for only £30 a year. With a Mr. Blobby scheme, pink with yellow dots, being tax-free. You are allowed to paint your cars to change the tax band. Would it help if BMW released an official retro German pink and yellow hue paint for the Z3? Wow, this is like a fever dream. Where do I start? Seriously, £700. I don't know what I pay currently, to be honest, because I've got so many cars and they all just come out by direct debit every month. Right, bright yellow. I don't mind bright yellow cars. Okay. Don't think I'd want a Z3 in bright yellow, but the right car, like a Smart, for example, looks amazing in bright yellow against black or silver. Pink, I don't like pink. It's one of my least favourite colours. I just don't like it. So definitely wouldn't want it pink. I wouldn't repaint it. Mr. Blobby, oh, that was it, wasn't that hideous? Mr. Blobby. If you don't know who Mr. Blobby is, I'll put a picture on the screen. If you're in the UK, you'll know. It was a very 90s thing. Noel Edmonds had something to do with it. Great big bloated inflatable creature. It was sinister. It was pink and it was yellow, and it had this hideous grin, permanent grin, a permagrin, if that's a word. And it made a very weird metallic-y kind of noise. I wonder if I can actually put that on without getting a copyright strike. Let me try. I hated that thing. I don't want anything to do with Mr. Blobby. Would it help if BMW released an official retro German pink and yellow? No, frankly, it wouldn't. You know what? I'll just pay the 700 quid and be done. I don't care. But thanks for your question. The next question is from Brauschermann. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. What's the highest number of vehicles you've ever owned at any one time? Which was your favourite? How much space could you use at home for your cars? Oh, you've got 3 questions in there. I like that. What's the highest number of vehicles you've ever owned at any one time? It's probably where I am now, to be honest. I don't think I've ever gone much above 4. So at the moment I've got the 3 cars and the 1 motorcycle. Going back in time, there was an occasion when I had, similar actually, 3 cars and a bike. Back then it was a Mark II Astra GTE convertible in black, an MR2 T-Bar in green. It was a Mark II, beautiful thing that I imported from Japan via the Netherlands. I had a Nova as well at the time, don't tell anyone about that one. And I had a Piaggio NRG scooter back then. So yeah, 4 I think. Which was your favourite? Oh, it's hard to say. I've loved so many of my cars. It's impossible. I wish I could keep them all. There are so many that I wish I had. I had an Opel Monza when I was a young man. That was beautiful. 3 litre, straight 6. I wish I'd kept that. I loved my Mark II Astra GTE convertible. That was a great car. It was almost as though I approached the manufacturer and sat down in a chair and said, look, I'm 6'1", I weigh this. Make a car to fit me. Because proportionally it was perfect, just the driving position, everything. It was like it was designed around me. I don't know, it's not exactly the classiest thing out there, but in its day it was a very nice machine, and it had that wonderful LCD dash that looks really 80s now, but I loved that. And how much space could you use at home for your cars? Well, I'm quite lucky because I've got a really nice garage and I've got a really decent driveway, so I've got space for probably about 5 cars. But I like them inside, so ideally I'd like a decent sized garage or maybe a barn. But with barns you do have problems with like rodents and things, especially in the countryside, so it needs to be like a decent building, not an old barn, a decent kind of strong building that's really dry, maybe heated even, to stop things from rusting. Maybe one day. Next question here from Scott COD4. Scott COD4. Will there be any more Smart for 2 content, and do you plan any more how-to guides? Yes, I mean there will be. It's very dependent on what needs doing. I've got the Smart now. There will be a clutch video at some point. It will need doing eventually. I think if you've followed my videos on that car, you'll know that I thought it needed a clutch straight away. It doesn't. If there are any things I can think of that are easy to make, that will help people without me having to buy parts. See, this is the thing, I have to buy parts for all these videos. So I could do a how-to on everything, but ultimately I'm going to be replacing parts. I can't just take the car apart for no reason. The Smart videos, to be fair, have really served me well on the channel, and I really like making them. And then you go on to say that my guides have helped you with your engine mount, dash cam and the cabin pollen filter. So that's really good. I'm genuinely glad that my videos do help people. And the final question here is from Dave Sluggy. The question is, could you do an instruction fix for replacing the belts on a 451 MHD? Now there's one problem here, and that's that I don't actually have an MHD car. I have covered belt replacement on a conventional 451, the 84 brake, when I did the aircon compressor, but it will be different for the MHD. I have to make a video, I have to have a need to make the video. I have to either have a car here that needs that doing to it, or be able to take it apart for the sole purpose of making a video. So unless I actually end up having one that needs it, I can't be sure that I'll be doing one of those in the near future, but never say never. So those are your questions. I hope they've been useful. I hope you've enjoyed a nice cold beer with me. Amazingly, I've still got some of this left. So that's it for this video. I do hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it was insightful. I look forward to seeing you again in another one very soon.